Welcome. This is the first of 3 narrated slide decks produced by Outfitters 4 that provide an introduction to basic elements of not-for-profit board structure and function. However you managed to stumble upon these brief discussions of the nature of not-for-profit management, we're glad you made it. My name is Doug Borwick, and I will be your guide here. I am the CEO and co-founder of Outfitters 4, a consulting and management services organization for the not-for-profit sector. But that's the last commercial you'll hear from me here. These videos are, of course, simply narrated slides. Feel free to hit pause on those rare occasions when you see something worth looking at longer. I would hope that there won't be too many instances in which you will be tempted to hit fast forward. So, with that introduction, let's begin. During my 3 decades as a professor at Salem College, one of my tasks was to develop Salem's major in this field. We consciously chose not-for-profit management as its name. Non-profit, the most commonly used term, implies that a lack of revenue is the defining characteristic of the sector. Of course, the inability to gain sufficient revenue from sale of services is the reason the 501c3 corporation was created. Society's need for programming that doesn't pass the market test is why the sector exists. But it is not the insufficiency of earned income that defines the work. It is what not-for-profits do that is important. Not-for-profit, in contrast to non-profit, focuses us on the mission-centered nature of the work. It also helps us highlight the many differences that exist between for-profit and not-for-profit management. But if we are going to be honest, we have to admit that there is no functional difference between non-profit and not-for-profit. We have just chosen not-for-profit for the reasons mentioned, although defining something as a negative is its own problem. And I'll have to admit that non-profit is easier to say. The world will keep saying non-profit to refer to this sector. I will keep referring to it as not-for-profit in formal presentations. However, in everyday communication with colleagues, I happily use the term non-profit. In the United States, generally speaking, there are 3 broad categories through which we organize ourselves to get things done. The next 3 slides attempt to summarize them. The first is the government. Its constituency is the majority of the population. Its motivation should be, the public good. Its accountability is affirmed periodically through the ballot box, and its function is to manage the established order. My primary concern in these 3 slides is the accountability column. With the government, at least in theory, there is an objective standard of accountability. Whoever receives the most votes wins. While that may be arguable, the principle is sound. For our purposes, the theory of an objective standard for accountability will serve us. Next is the for-profit corporation. Its constituency is individuals, stockholders, those people who own the corporation. Its motivation is private gain, and there is absolutely nothing wrong with private gain. Its accountability is in the financials, balance sheet and income statement, and its function is to develop and provide goods and services. With respect to accountability, it used to be that I could talk about this as an objective standard. You could tell if a corporation was successful by looking at its financials. However, just like with the government, over the last few decades, things have transpired to make us question that. Nevertheless, the theory that accountability in the for-profit world should be judgeable on an objective standard still holds true. And finally, we get to the not-for-profit world. Its constituency is some minority of the population, and I need to explain that this is not minority in the sense we usually use the term in the United States. This means simply some subset of the total population that is less than 50%. The motivation is the public good. The accountability is through a mission statement, and its function is to provide services, develop ideas, and advocate for change. The purpose of all 3 of these slides has been to allow me now to turn to the accountability in the not-for-profit world and acknowledge that a mission statement, unlike the accountability in the for-profit world and in the government, is an abstract concept. There can be no objective measure of success. As a result, an argument can be made that management in the not-for-profit sector is inherently more difficult than in government or in the for-profit world. Before a 501c3 can make any decisions about what it actually does, it has to translate that abstract concept into operational plans. This will help you understand why I am so passionate about the need for effective planning in the not-for-profit world. This slide introduces some of the terminology used to describe the not-for-profit world. Third sector you will understand as being the third after government and for-profit. Independent sector, non-profit sector, not-for-profit sector, the private-public service sector, voluntary sector, and in the international arena, NGOs, non-governmental organizations, and civil society organizations, CSOs. We might like it if there was standardized terminology, but this is a relatively young field, and I don't anticipate such standardization in the foreseeable future. The organizations with which we are principally concerned are known as 501c3 corporations. 501c3 designates the paragraph of the federal tax code that authorizes the tax-exempt status of these corporations. It's at least moderately interesting to note that there are many other categories of not-for-profit corporations. When I taught this subject, I would sometimes mention 501c1, c2, c4, c5, c6, etc. But as I said, our concern here is almost exclusively with 501c3s. The categories listed on the slide are taken directly from the tax code that describes the kinds of corporations that can qualify for this particular sort of tax-exempt status. Coming from an arts background myself, I always enjoy at this point asking if anyone sees anything missing from this list. The obvious answer, of course, is the arts. The way that the arts are included in 501c3 organizations is that they fall under education or sometimes charitable. And that's an important point for every not-for-profit arts organization to bear in mind. Many find the language of the tax code a little odd. For our purposes, the list of kinds of organizations that's found on this slide details the types of groups generally included in the 501c3 world. Advocacy, arts, education, healthcare, religion, and social service organizations form the bulk of the sector. Foundations, as a category, is in parentheses because it is a subset of 501c3 that is very much unlike the others. Foundations are distinguished from the other forms of 501c3 in that they have significant assets available to them, and they have particular legal mandates as to how they use those assets. This, then, is the end of our introduction to the basics of not-for-profit management. I trust you all understand that you now know almost enough to be dangerous. I hope for all our sakes you will choose to learn more about the field.